Well, it is.
Oh, this is not the last. All the assistants. That's.
In Sweden, but
This should be working.
that was the end of the trip.
Good morning.
Good morning.
A sincere welcome to all, whether you're here today in person or joining us on YouTube. A special welcome to visitors and first-time attendees. My name is Lucille LePage, this morning's worship associate. A few announcements before the service begins. First of all, some good news. Today is Sunday. We hope you'll stay after the service and build your own ice cream sundae in the social hall downstairs. The church's membership team will be providing all the fixings for you to create. Everyone's welcome, regular attendees and visitors to go with us. And following the ice cream social, Reverend Janet and Nancy and John Koppelman will be leading another in a series of conversations about adapting to the gender fluidity of loved ones. You're invited to attend and to ask questions, connect with others, and learn more about how we can be best prepared to support our loved ones. The Gloucester Meeting House Foundation free annual not exactly outdoor this week, but the free annual music series will begin this Friday, July 5th at 6 p.m. with the John Boboyan Ensemble. It will probably not take place on the church's lawn as usual, because of the work that is being done to the lawn. It will probably be downstairs in the social hall. You can find more details about the concert, the series, and the work on the LA in your email church newsletter or by talking with Charles Zarian. At next Sunday's service, we're going to be observing the annual flower communion. So please, next week, bring to the service with you 1 or 2 flowers, if you can. Garden flowers are good, florist flowers, wildflowers, even sidewalk crack flowers are fine. If you can't bring a flower, no worries. Come anyway, please. There will be extra flowers, so don't let the lack of a flower or anything else keep you from coming and taking part in this joyful traditional service next week. You might have noticed as you entered the church today, the banner with the word peace that is gracing the outside front of our church building directly over the entrance. It's the most recent of many beautiful and eloquent banners that Sally Waite, let's see, Sally, where are you? Sally Waite has created for our church. And Sally also brought the beautiful flowers today. So, Sally, many, many thanks. And from Christine in the church office, summer office hours are going to reduce to 10 hours per week for July and August. Hours will continue to be mornings, Monday through Friday, but could change due to personal commitments this summer. So please contact Christine ahead of time if you need to get into the building, which is normally locked on weekdays. Oftentimes Christine is not in the office because of doing church errands outside the building. So if you need to get in on a weekday, please call Christine first. Also, Reverend Janet will be on study leave from July 1st to July 13th and on vacation from July 22nd to the 31st. There's more news and information about our church life in your emailed weekly church announcements, and you are encouraged to read these each Friday so as not to miss anything. If you'd like to learn more about our church or get in touch with Reverend Janet, please fill out one of the yellow cards on the backs of the pews. And if you are watching from home, we encourage you to take a minute now to get a candle or chalice and matches ready so you can join in when you light the chalice here shortly after the service starts. And finally, we have sad news. We are deeply sorrowful to announce the death last Tuesday of our dear fellow church member, Lucy Myers. We will miss Lucy's steadfast presence among us. Sympathy cards may be sent to Lucy's longtime partner, Sally Willard, at their address, which you'll find in your church directory. And now our service will begin.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Peggy Kimball, and I'll be leading the service today. Not Reverend Janet. You are welcome, no matter what your sexuality is or your gender identity. Today, this is Gay Pride Month, and it's just ending, but we are looking at today at sexuality, human sexuality, through the lens of gender identity. And yes. So the opening words are by Mary Oliver, who was herself a lesbian woman. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. Our opening hymn is number 95 in the Great Hymnal.
flaming chalice. Please read the words that are printed in your order of service.
Light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift.
Since the beginning of Russia's attack on Ukraine more than 2 years ago, each week we have been lighting the peace candle. We continue to light it, remembering all the places in the world where there's violent conflict, too many places. And today we especially remember all the countries in the world where LGBTQ persons are not safe. And that unfortunately does often include our own country. My apologies for having lit the wrong candle a few minutes ago, but now they are both lit. Good morning.
Good morning.
First, let me express my gratitude for this opportunity. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Let me express my gratitude for this opportunity to tell this story in front of safe people. Being gay was such a shameful thing when I was growing up, so I was trained to hide it. I'm grateful for the brave people that have come before me, so that this religion, this church, is here for me. Originally, I was asked to share my coming out story, and I started focusing on what the deeper meaning of coming out is. The messages I heard in society, on TV, the movies, in my family, led me to believe all kinds of false things about being gay. This led me to hiding and lying my true self about myself, to myself, and therefore to the world. All through my 20s, I was in the closet trying to believe I was straight. Accepting the truth, the deep truth, that I was gay and that God loves me just as I am, even if my family and society couldn't, is a process that I went through at the age of 30. I met Carrie a year later. When I think of Carrie, I experience a feeling of loving kindness in my heart. I have since day one. She's like a breath of fresh air to me. I have a guided meditation on loving kindness that I do, and at one point it says, bring to mind a person or being who loves you to invite the feeling of loving kindness into your heart. You can feel this person or being's love in the way they greet you or listen to you. I feel filled up when I bring her to me. She sees me. From day one, Carrie has been my friend.
God rather than a punishing God. Throughout the years, we've each expanded our spiritual lives. I feel closest to God when I am outside, playing in the woods, or in the ocean, or when we are creating a video together, or writing and performing music together. We love to experience the awe of nature, whether it's a storm or wild animals. Being in the moment is easy with Carrie. Why is it important to share our story? Because if people hadn't come out before me and shared who they really are, I wouldn't have had the courage to come out myself. And therefore, I wouldn't have experienced this deep love I have with Carrie and with God. When I was frightened and hiding my true self, I was disconnected from God. I also couldn't imagine marriage as a gay one. I had no role models growing up, and my parents divorced when I was a child. Our first principle of Unitarian Universalism is the inherent worth and dignity of every person. How could I have experienced my inherent worth and dignity if I had not been allowed to marry the woman I love? We married in this church with 150 friends and family members, including my mother, who wore a mother of the bride hat and sat in the front row. Lots of healing has taken place over the years. It was because of our minister and the people of this church that took our relationship seriously that we started off our union with such a solid base of support. That support continues to this day, and I'm very grateful for being asked to share this and for your attention this morning. Thank you.
That's going to be tough to beat. I want to thank Peggy Kimball for asking us to participate in this service. It's a privilege and an honor and a blessing. When Peggy first asked us to share our coming out stories, I thought, oh boy, that's not a simple task. Because a queer person is constantly having to come out over one's lifetime. Every new job, new doctor, new acquaintance, everything, you're always coming out, so to speak. So when she suggested instead that we tell our relationship origin story, I was thrilled. That story, rather than being one of struggle and fear and despair, is one of serendipity, joy, and spiritual union. So I get to do the good part. So this is going to be fun for you guys because it relates to this church quite a bit. Deb and I met in Gloucester in 1994. We had both recently moved here from Medford and Somerville, respectively. We initially met at a 12-step recovery meeting and then again at Artspace, where we were fortunate enough to meet a Renaissance man by the name of Shep Abbott. Deb and I quickly discovered we had many interests in common: music, art, recovery, and the spiritual dimension. We also came to realize that we had been living lives in tandem. For example, we were both students at Massachusetts College of Art. Deb's first year was my last year. We both got sober in Cambridge and went to the Looney meeting in Harvard Square at noontime. We both had mutual acquaintances at Mass Art and in Cambridge, but we had never met each other. The most fun fact, however, is that we both attended the ecumenical service at Old South Church in Boston before Gay Pride in 1993. The Reverend Wendy Fitting from Gloucester was giving a sermon that year. Deb and I were both in the process of moving here, so our ears perked up. Wendy spoke of the love of community in the rock-shaped hearts at Grace Cove. It was a good omen. We both thought to ourselves, we'll have to check out that Union Church because Wendy hooked us in. So here we found ourselves in Gloucester in 1994, running in the same circles and becoming good friends. It was easy with Deb, talking, laughing, being silly, being vulnerable, realizing we shared the same values. This is when it gets good. Deb announced to me one day that she was going on a date with a mutual acquaintance, but a strange thing happened. I discovered that I was not at all happy about this. I found solace that evening in my friend Shep Abbott's company, where he made me his famous chicken curry. I told him my dilemma. I have feelings for her that I simply didn't realize I had before now. And Shep simply said, "You two were meant for each other. You have to tell her." So this is how that went. I asked, "How did your date go?" Deb said something like, "Fine." So I went on to say that if she was planning on going on another date, I was going to have to back off. At this, she wryly questioned, "Why?" And I said, "Because I have feelings for you." Deb broke into a big, wide smile and said, "Well, I won't do that again then." And so began the romance that has lasted from that day forward. Deb and I married at this church on August 12th in 2000. It was a wonderful celebration, as Deb mentioned, although I did feel bad for Lucille, who had to clean up after us. Because we had our reception in the social hall, and it was a rowdy group. Anyway, in 2004, when gay marriage became legal in Massachusetts, Deb and I and Wendy Fitting trotted down to City Hall and were among the first to register there as a gay married couple. We took Wendy out to dinner at Bertucci's, and she gave us sound advice. She said, "Remember, your marriage is the third entity. There will be days when you have to fight for the third entity." We have been blessed to have the support of our families and friends over this almost 30 years. Our love continues to go stronger and deeper. It is a gift to find a soulmate in this lifetime, and I do not take it for granted, not for a single day. Thank you. So now we're gonna sing a little song. We've written many, many songs, love songs and just songs, but this is a song that Audrey wrote. We wrote these songs so many years ago, but anyway, it's a good one. I hope you like it.
Love my island, baby, I love your spirit. Return to my God and let your spirit soar over mountains to the sea, back to caverns, you and me. And she said, "Love
The readings today are by Walt Whitman. As you know, probably, Walt Whitman was an American poet, essayist, and journalist of the late 19th century. His poems in Leaves of Grass were controversial at the time. Whitman is reputed to have been gay. There is no definite evidence of that. However, there is a cluster of poems called the Calamus poems in these Leaves of Grass that celebrate the manly love of comrades. Critics now agree that these Calamus poems are the clearest expression of Whitman's idea of male love. The first poem is, "Are you the new person drawn toward me? Are you the new person drawn toward me? To begin with, take warning. I am surely different from what you suppose. Do you suppose you will find in me your ideal? Do you think it is so easy to have me become your lover? Do you think the friendship of me will be unalloyed satisfaction? Do you think I am trustworthy and faithful? Do you see no further than this facade, the smooth and tolerant manner of me? Do you suppose yourself advancing on real ground toward a real heroic man? Have you thought, O dreamer, that it may be all an illusion?" The second poem is "To a Stranger." "Passing stranger, you do not know how longingly I look upon you. You must be he I was seeking, or she I was seeking. It comes to me as a dream. I have somewhere surely led a life of joy with you. All is recalled as we flit by each other, fluid, affectionate, chaste, matured. You grew up with me, were a boy with me or a girl with me. I ate with you and slept with you. Your body has become not yours only, nor left my body mine only. You give me pleasure of your eyes, face, flesh as we pass. You take of my beard, breast, hands in return. I am not to speak to you. I am to think of you when I sit alone or wake at night alone. I am to wait. I do not doubt I am to meet you again. I am to see to it that I do not lose you." So in the readings.
The next speaker is Andy Bruno, a member of this church.
Since this is about being out and improvement, it's a scary thing, and therefore it's always better that the person comes out, not that somebody does it for them. That should not happen. But to show you how scary it is, I'm a little person, and I was even smaller back then, and that is belly. When I was 19 years old, I went to basic training in the Air Force to be a medic, because I cannot stand weapons, I don't like anything like that, I'm a pacifist, and a liberal. So I'm going to be a medic. And at the end of basic training, I found out I'm not going to be a medic. I'm going to be security police, which is not police, it's foot soldiers in the front line. So I had to go to the M16 rifle, the grenade launcher, all this stuff I did not ever want to know about. But the scariest and at the same time funniest one was the M16 machine gun. It was the second scariest thing I ever did in my life. I'm so small, 110 pounds, and he was so big, it's amazing he didn't flip me over. The sergeant was trying not to laugh, but I did my duty the way they said, because I humbly listened to them and did it right. You do not know how terrifying that thing is. But that's a joke compared to coming out. The second or third time he came was to my mother, and that was for about 7 minutes. And then she just dismissed it like it wasn't true. That wasn't the scariest. It was the first time I came out to a guy I worked with who was enlightened, good guy, good liberal. I knew he was friendly to LGBTQ, which we didn't have that phrase yet, but he was. This is 1991. And he was so nice. I knew there'd be no problem. And he drove me back into town from where we were working. We got off at 3:30. I had to wait till 5, just a hot gap in the catering bus at the glass sailor. You might remember the glass sailor on Duncan Street. I came up to him on the way there, going down Maywood Avenue and all that. He was so sweet, he was so nice, no danger, no feeling of anything. And yet, it was so scary. I sat for an hour and a half in that cafe with shaking uncontrollably, my coffee making waves every time I get the coffee out. That's how scary to somebody I knew was accepted. Imagine how scary otherwise. Now, it's nothing. They just say it anyway, but not at the time. So if anybody ever comes out to you, remember what's behind it, how scared they are. And now I have confidence I didn't have then. Just a few months ago, when I was still 65, I'm 66 now, an unbelievable bigot at the Grace Center, a guy with a pit bull dog too, he said to my face, but not to me, word for word, that trans people are groomers and pedophiles. And I thought, humor. I said to him, I'm a 65-year-old virgin. How can I be a pedophile? And he laughed. When you can get the bully to laugh, especially when they have a pit bull, that is healthy, you know? And now I'm a 66-year-old virgin, so that hasn't changed at all. But that's the confidence I got. Plus, because my life started over again in 1991, at 33 years old, I love all this 90s music. Green Day, Alanis Morissette, Blues Traveler, R.E.M., all that. Because it's like my life started over again. So coming out is so important, not just for yourself, but, wait, you mentioned it. How is somebody going to know that we even exist if somebody doesn't come out, right? And then somebody says, some bigot says, oh, I don't know any of those bleeping trannies, I don't know any of these faggots, I don't know, whatever. Maybe you do, but they haven't come out yet because they're so terrified. That's why it's important to come out, but at your own time. And if you're little, if you're a small cis woman, if you're a small trans woman, and yes, I was just going to start on hormones and COVID hit, so I'm kind of behind the time there. If you're a small cis guy, use humor, but also have your little cute, pink, fashionable friend that's pepper spray. I hope I never have to use it, but it's there. But most likely humor will do it. It almost always does. A certain guy that comes in here sometimes is also quite prejudiced. Considers me his friend, in spite of all his homophobia. And I can get him to laugh by doing Curly from the Three Stooges, even though I don't like the Three Stooges. Mention we both like Karen Carpenter, and it calms him down. Usually verbal things, something in common, like people have so much in common, but something even like that, a person who seems hostile, can help, but just in case of the minutes. So that's pretty much it, and I haven't been here for a while because my friend, her father died at 79, a lot of health problems and everything, but I'll try to come back more often because it's a beautiful place. I'm not really Unitarian Universalist, I'm agnostic, because this is supposed to be an atheist. I come here for the feeling of LGBTQ acceptance and the pipe. So. I love Bach Fuse, but we haven't had too many things lately. But remember that. When somebody comes out to you, remember the fear, the terror that's behind it. Even if you're a nice person. Keep that in mind. If you're an ally, that's part of being an ally. Thank you.
This morning's offering will now be gratefully received. Blessings from the givers and upon your gifts.
think it's a little easier for me to do it this way. What people have said about coming out is extremely deep. Coming out to oneself is probably the hardest part of the whole process. And I think this is not only true for gay people, but people acknowledging who they are. In Shakespeare, in Hamlet, he's given the advice, to thine own self be true. This is extremely difficult when the society that you grow up in, especially in the 50s and 60s as I did, had an extremely negative view of people who were then considered by names that we consider very unfriendly today. The LGBTQ moniker today kind of covers everything, and we tend to use it in a very open way. But when I was growing up, I can remember even in the late 60s, as I became aware of the world around me, of people being called queer in a very nasty way, or other words. And it's very, very difficult growing up knowing that you're different, even if you're not sexually different than other people, but even if you're just different because you're different. And I had all of those. I grew up in a two-family house that was filled mostly with women. I had a wonderful mom and 3 older sisters and an aunt who lived upstairs and her daughter. My father and his brother were in business together, in the jewelry business, and they left early in the morning and they arrived late in the evening, so we didn't see a lot of them. So I was the only male and the youngest in this household. And as you can imagine, the closest sister of mine was 8 years older. So she was going through her teenage years of insecurity, feeling that she wasn't appealing, and my other sisters had all been going through their own angst. So here I am in the midst of this world, and my mother, who desperately wanted to have a son, had these 3 daughters, and at the very last, my father and she decided they would try once more because her sister had a son. And so I have a cousin, Wayne, who's exactly 9 months older than I am. They finally succeeded. But my mother had also grown up in a family of all women. Unfortunately, the one boy who was born into her family was a twin, and he died, but the sister survived. So my mother didn't have a big skill set, one could say, about how to raise a son. She was particularly proud of me, however, because unlike other boys, her friends would come to visit and I would be quietly building houses out of blocks in the corner, or occasionally I'd be asked to play the piano and I would play something nice. And my mother was just enormously proud of this. She had absolutely no idea of what was happening to me in the schoolyard. And that was a whole different story. For one thing, they didn't figure out that I needed glasses until I was in the 3rd grade. So every time I tried to play ball with other boys, I got hit in the head. And it's no wonder that I didn't do it very much, because it was not very much fun. And I was picked on as a result. So I knew what bullying was all about, and I knew what being different was all about, long before the sexuality question came into play. And that's one thing I want to stress to people, is that when we talk about sexuality and being different, it is not so far removed from simply being different in many other ways. I imagine that probably every one of you in this room has experienced in your lifetime the sense of being different than your peers, or somehow ostracized, or perhaps accepted but acknowledged as being somehow odd. And that, I think, is just part of life. It's one of those things that we go through as we try to discover who we truly are. Now, we can't really talk about gay pride without touching at least tangentially on the question of sex. But talking about sex in church is kind of a fraught subject, even in the UU world. So I'm going to attempt not to have a Stormy Daniels moment here. However, the first sexual experiences I had were with a next door neighbor. I was 12 and he was 11, and he grew up in a very devout Catholic household in which his grandmother actually ruled the roost. It was Nana who controlled the household. And all the women of the household, every morning in their black robes, went to Mass at St. Teresa's Church, a couple blocks away from our house. They had absolutely no idea what John and I were up to in the basement. And we made sure that that was true. We were both very good at keeping secrets. And this is another thing about growing up gay, is that one learns at a very, very early age that there are certain things that you let people know, and there are certain things that you do not. And that includes, if not especially includes, your parents. And this can take on some very heavy and tragic elements. People have talked about how in the 60s and 70s in particular, loving parents were so afraid of their children being gay or homosexual that they sent them to psychiatrists, and psychiatrists did some pretty horrible things in those days. This is something that is hard, I think, for people to understand. How can you grow up with a set of loving parents, as I did, and yet need to keep your identity hidden from them? Which is what I did. I can tell you one instance that convinced me of this. There was a friend of my parents and the family in general who was a psychiatrist who worked at the Furman School. And I remember him visiting our house and talking about how important it was to give lobotomies to certain people so that they would not reproduce. And I came to the conclusion that Dr. Arslanyan could be my nemesis, and that even though my parents were very loving people, homophobia was deep enough that I could never trust them with knowing. That's an extremely heavy and painful thing to carry. On the plus side, we had a wonderful and loving church environment in which I was very active. I sung in junior choir and enjoyed participating in events with our youth groups. In fact, I helped lead many conventions with our various youth groups in what was then called the Armenian Protestant Youth Fellowship. However, as I became more and more self-aware, I started to feel the tension between religious belief and my sexuality. Now, this wasn't true with my home minister, who I believe in my heart of hearts was really a universalist. And when we finished our Sunday school training, each of us received a Bible, and he chose the verse to go into each of our Bibles. And for mine, he chose, "Thou shalt love thy God with all thy heart, and all thy soul, and all thy mind." And I know that Dr. Hadrian had already figured me out. He was a really deep person, and I found out many, many years later, after his retirement, through his daughter, that he really was a universalist at his heart. He believed in a loving God, and he was not a judgmental person in any way. That was a great boon to me. But on the other side of the coin, I came to read parts of the Bible myself, and I came to the conclusion that although there might be a loving God out there, the way religion was being practiced around me, especially with regard to gay people, was not okay. So I dealt myself into science and into anthropology, and I came to the conclusion that there was no evidence that could convince me that there was truly a loving God. And for a time, I really could call myself an atheist. This was very difficult in a family as devout as mine. I remember going to communion once with my parents because I couldn't not go, but I refused to take the wine and the bread. And several people looked at me like very strangely. In any case, what was happening inside is very important. I eventually got to college, and at college I was still in a place where I wasn't out to myself. I still was hoping that my gayness was a phase that I was going through, as they used to like to say. And in my second year of college, I met a very wonderful woman who is still my soulmate to this very day. And we both had reasons for wanting to pursue a relationship. Her sexuality, as it turned out, was also quite fluid. And we had a wonderful year together, and the year after that, she got together with a woman who liked to smoke cigars and eventually became a lawyer, if that tells you anything. And so we experienced women's liberation, gay liberation, the black movement, the anti-war movement, all of that in the late 60s and 70s in the context of self-discovery. It was around this time that I realized that I absolutely had to be true to myself. So I started looking for groups in the Hartford area where I was going to college. And I found an ad in the paper in which a group was meeting. So I went off campus in the dark of night. I found the house. There was one bulb on in the porch. The door was open. I walked up 3 flights of stairs, and there was a door slightly ajar. And I just slightly pushed open the door, and there were a bunch of people who were scared to death of me. I was wearing a shirt with epaulets, which happened to be in the style of the time, but they thought I was the cops. So that's how that started. But in the context of that meeting, and this was a seminal point for me, Guy got up and said, I am not a homosexual. I'm a homosexual human being. And that was a moment in which a bulb went off in my head. And I started to think, okay, this is an adjective. This isn't who I am in total. This is one of my many facets. So time went along, I started to get more comfortable with myself. I actually helped start the first gay liberation group at my college the following year. But it was a risky business because I still wasn't out to my parents. And there was always that possibility of some transfer of information occurring. Now the college, on the other hand, were very supportive, but not necessarily in the way one would expect. They helped fund some of our parties, which was marvelous. We used to get $50 so we could go out and buy cheap wine and put on a party. Well, I went to a faculty meeting one day, and the vice president of the college said to me, Charles, you're doing a great service. I had no idea what he meant at the moment. He said, well, people really need to discover themselves, and you're giving them a wonderful opportunity. I thought, my gosh, they think we're running a bordello. Nothing could have been further from the truth. It was really more about rescuing people who were in desperate need. One of the people who couldn't join our group openly for the longest time was one of the star rowers on the crew team. And I found out about his situation, and I actually went and found him in one of the carols in our library on the second lower level. I could easily have outed him, but I was very, very careful. He became a lifelong friend. And believe me, this sort of thing of having meetings with people, of what we used to call consciousness raising, this really was a way for people to become comfortable with themselves and realize that, yes, they were gay or lesbian, but they were also infinitely other things as well. So I came to near the end of my college years, and I had started playing the pipe organ during that period, partially because I missed my spiritual life. And I found in music, especially in the music of Johann Sebastian Bach, a way to reconnect to the divine. And for me, that has remained a core piece of what makes church for me and what makes life meaningful for me, that wonderful thing. Two more thoughts I need to share with you. One was when I finally came out to my mother. I think it was probably the most, if not the most difficult, one of the most difficult moments of my life. She and I were very close, and yet there was a whole part of me she knew nothing about. And when I came out to her, she began to cry. And when she finally expressed herself, she said, "You were the tree in the center of my garden, and I waited all these years for you to bloom." It was an absolutely heartrending moment. But as the years passed by, and unfortunately her life was cut short by cancer, she made sure that I knew that she loved me deeply and accepted me for who I am. However, and this will be my close, she admonished me never to tell my father. Now this put me into an extremely difficult situation. My father was a very bright person and not easily fooled. So when I had a boyfriend and he would be visiting, I would introduce him to my father. And in fact, I had an older guy in my life in my late 20s who lived in New York City and was a very successful interior designer. And my father thought that Ruben was absolutely wonderful and that I should go work with him. He had no clue, of course, of what was going on otherwise, but I would find the two of them drinking scotch in our living room. My mother and I would be preparing dinner in the kitchen. So go figure. However, many, many years went by, and as my father came into his last years in his late 80s and early 90s, and people got tired of asking me when I was going to get married, there came a day, and my father was at this point now 93, when I was working at the Fisk shop, and he was visiting me for a few weeks. And the phone rang, and my father said, "Are you coming home for lunch, son?" And I said, "I wasn't planning on it." And he said, "I think you should." So I came home, and he admitted to me that he had been looking for a bathrobe and was in my closet. Now, I knew perfectly well that my father had his own bathrobe, first of all. Second of all, he should have thought twice before going through my closet. And third, he somehow found a magazine in the base of my closet, which was not so easy to find. And he said, "You know, son, I found something in your closet I really didn't expect." Okay, so now what do I do? So Dad and I had to talk. And two things came out of this. One was that my father admitted to me that when he was 11 years old, his father, my grandfather, was coming back from the Turkish baths, what's called the hammam. And my grandmother knew that my grandfather was having sex with a guy in the hammam. And my father was only 11 at the time. And my grandmother, who was a very devout Christian, warned him never to have intimate relations with this man again. Well, this came as a complete shock to me. I'd been looking at my grandfather's portrait in our guest room for years and had no idea that something like this was in our background. And I asked my dad, I said, "Did you know at 11 what your mother was talking about?" And he said, "Of course I knew. It was very common among the Turkish people." So there you go. Finally, as months went by, he and I did reach a point of acceptance. And his final words were, it must be in your genes. What can I say?
Don't we all love Charles Nazarian? Yeah. A beautiful human.
Sent on wings from the same place as me. She was sent on wings from the same place as me. And she is a poet, and she is my poet, and she sings her she moves under the water, and she stirs inside of me, and we soar under the water, moving graceful, fast and free. Oh, she has risen from my dream state. Watch my angel fly. She heard bird lighting up the sky. Lift me up by your loving eyes. Take me home, hold me tonight. And she saw. Watch my angel fly. She heard bird lighting up the sky. Lift me up by your loving eyes. Take me home.
Sexual identity has a big role in our lives. It may evolve over the course of our lives, and my story is one of evolution. Like Charles, I came of age in the 1950s and 60s, when social norms were a lot more rigid. I grew up in the territory of Hawaii, before Hawaii became a state. I had a boyfriend in the 5th grade and another one in the 8th grade. But by the time I reached adolescence, I was confused, totally confused. I had entered a girls' school in Northern California, and I had crushes on girls. I tried to conform to the social norms by having boyfriends in the summer. My mother wanted me to take an interest in boys, as my older sister had. From both of them, I received encouragement to have boyfriends. The word lesbian made me very nervous. After high school, I tried college in California. But I had begun to drink and got into academic trouble, and I dropped out of college. My self-esteem suffered. Ultimately, I was sent from California to Boston to be hospitalized. This was a mental hospital. I realized that I was struggling with my identity and sexuality. I didn't want to be a lesbian, certainly, but I was attracted to women. Drinking made it possible for me to live with the conflict and confusion. My first girlfriend was a woman I met in the hospital. The romance ended when she left the hospital, and soon I too was discharged. I joined AA and began a healthier lifestyle. I also moved to Cambridge. I began exploring the gay and lesbian scene. Then I met a woman with 3 children who was married to a doctor. They were getting a divorce. We formed a relationship, and I moved in with her and her children in Wellesley. Ultimately, we renovated a house in Cambridge. Initially, being with her gave me confidence. I went back to college and graduated. Because it was a women's college, there were lesbian groups. No one, except me, felt uncomfortable with the word lesbian. That relationship lasted for about 7 years. After that relationship ended, I met another woman with whom I formed a relationship. For some of that time, I was going to graduate school and beginning a professional life, and that relationship ended after 8 years. A few brief romances followed, men as well as women. I began to focus on work. I began teaching, first high school level, and then at a college. I moved from Cambridge to the North Shore and ultimately chose Gloucester as my home. The years in Gloucester have been happy. Although there have been other brief romances, I have been pretty much unattached during my life in Gloucester. I am content with my life, but open to new possibilities. Being homosexual was once a terrible burden. People had to be closeted. When I was 19, a young man I knew shot himself and died because he was so ashamed of his behavior as a gay man. His father was Episcopal Bishop of Northern California, and the son's suicide was in the New York Times. I burst into tears when I first heard about it, and 50 years later, I still weep. These days, things are easier. I have reached a point in my life where I reject being labeled. I have evolved. The changes in terminology reflect social changes. For example, the word queer, once a derogatory term, has changed meaning and usage. The UUA defines it as attracted to many people, to people of many genders. I think that sort of describes me. Our church and the UUA support the choices we make. Considering that there are still religious groups and countries that ban homosexuality, I feel very fortunate to be part of this community. I am grateful. Eternal Spirit, we now are going to sing a song together, the closing song, and the words are in the order of service. So Steve will lead. words of Mode 2. When all the people of the world love, then the strong will not harm the weak. The many will not oppress the few. The wealthy will not mock the poor. The honored will not disdain the humble. The cunning will not deceive the simple.
We end our service as we do each week by extinguishing the flaming chalice. Please read the words that are in your order to serve.
We extinguish the